Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton. How do we select an appropriate rabbi to teach Noahides? Well, this is something that we have to be conscious of, and we have to be discerning in choosing a rabbi that we're confident in, that we know that they have appropriate knowledge and understanding of the 7 Noahide laws, in order that they can impart the appropriate practices, etc., that we should follow. Now, there are some links on my website, www.mynoahidefamily.com, where you can look up some relevant information in relation to this after I have finished this video. I want to mention a particular rabbi by the name Rabbi Avraham Blumenstiel, and he has provided an excellent course that is available on Noahide Nation's website. It is actually called Noahide Laws Self-Study Yeshiva Course. And it's also written, that course is also written in order to educate rabbis as well. Now, Rabbi Blumenstiel has really provided some extremely important information for Noahides. It's important guidelines for us as well, and it's especially, this particular lesson he gave was in relation to selecting a wise and appropriate rabbi to teach Noahides. And I found it invaluable. I think that the entire course that he delivers, it's something like 61 lessons, and I would recommend that you follow the links to that course and take a look at it, because every lesson is extremely enlightening and helpful. So in order to preserve the credit of Rabbi Blumenstiel and the text of his that he provided for this class, I'm going to proceed to read parts of that lesson, and that's so that I preserve the integrity of his message and what it has to say to us as Noahides. So the lesson that he has called it is called Selecting a Rabbi. And I'm just going to read now. So he does describe what the process was in ancient times in relation to a person being ordained as a rabbi. It was through the laying on of hands, and it was a different process to what's in place today in what we call modern day ordination. But in the ancient times, the ordination was ascending, and it was Yora Yora, meaning he shall instruct, or Yadin Yadin, meaning he shall judge, or Yata Yata, meaning he shall permit. And that was in relation to matters pertaining to animal slaughter and ritual purity. Now, the manner of which that ordination took place was unbroken up until about 132 to 135 Common Era. And that chain was then broken due to Roman persecution. The Romans were extremely suspicious of anything to do with the Jewish faith, etc., and so resulted in a tremendously brutal era in time, which meant that the Romans really outlawed the Jews, as well as their manner of ordaining rabbis, as we call them today. And this went on to about the 4th or 5th century Common Era, whereby the Romans had successfully driven most rabbinic communities across the borders into what we now call Iraq. A few sages remained in Israel, but the chain of what they call smicha, meaning ordination, eventually broke down. And over the following centuries, the title rabbi was not even used. If someone was an exceptional scholar, they were referred to as a wise one. If they held a position of authority in their community, they were known as an eminence. So the method of ordination in ancient times is different to what it is today. And it's about today that I want to bring to light. Blessings be upon Rabbi Blumenstiel for providing this information for us. So it's a subtitle, Rabbinic Ordination, Modern Smicha. In modern times, smicha refers to a degree or diploma certifying one as having completed a course of study in halakha, that's Jewish law. The impetus for this new smicha was the rise of the medieval university, which began to issue diplomas and degrees. So the Jewish communities saw the value in credentialing its religious scholars. They called this academic degree smicha in commemoration of the classic smicha, meaning that was done, how it was done in ancient times. While this smicha caught on in Europe's Jewish world, the Sephardic communities did not adopt it until approximately late 1920s. However, we're going to look at today's smicha, and it's given on 3 levels, so we'll relate these. So the Rav Umaning is equivalent to a bachelor's degree. And this is originated in the 20th century, originally at a rabbinical college in Baltimore. It certifies the holder as a teacher and as knowing the basic laws of the synagogue ritual services and observances for holidays. Now, not all yeshivas issue this smicha or accept it as valid. Where accepted, the holder then may use the title rabbi. Now, Yora, equivalent to a master's degree. And that takes about 4 to 6 years. So this is based on classic Yora, is usually awarded following a course of study in Kashrut, which is dietary laws, Shabbat, Ninda, laws pertaining to married women, and Avilius, which is mourning. Traditionally, the final exam is given, a very detailed subsection of the dietary laws, and it's the most common smicha that's issued today. A rabbi with this smicha who holds a position of communal authority may be called Rav. Now, the next course of study is Yadin, and this is also based on the classic smicha, and it's equivalent to a PhD. So this is a very, very involved and extensive study of the laws pertaining to money, monetary and civil damages, as well as the laws of marriage and divorce. And someone who holds this ordination may be called a dayan, or in the US, they may be called rabbi or rav. So this person who has got it's a PhD is a learned person. You know, we're looking at about 10 years of study to get to this level. The problem that is brought up here in relation to modern smicha is that the students of Judaism and Noahism should be aware that there are many details and problems with modern smicha. But the first thing I want to mention before we go any further is the fact that Noahide laws are not taught in today's yeshiva. So we cannot assume, this is my words, not Rabbi Blumenstiel's, we can't assume that every rabbi we attach ourselves or think we're comfortable with actually knows anything about the Noahide laws, etc. So we've got to be aware of it, and that is no disrespect to the rabbis, none whatsoever, because unless they voluntarily decide to study these laws out of interest's sake or whatever the case may be, how can they be expected to know them if they're not taught it? So we must be conscious of that and kind to them in regards to that they don't always know the answer. So we must be mindful of that as Noahides. So smicha really is, and I'm referring back to Rabbi Blumenstill's notes here, it's first and foremost a certification of Torah study. So it's only relevant to the study of Torah law. It is not awarded for knowledge in other areas. It's an academic degree and attained after a course of study and an examination. It is not awarded to a person based on their righteousness or their character, etc. There are people with smichas who it's actually a bit questionable, and that is unpleasant, but it does happen. So in the past 15 to 25 years or so, many yeshivas have begun awarding smichas in very specific areas of study. Now, this is where it gets interesting. For example, some may take a course in the laws of Shabbos and receive a smicha in Shabbos. This may even be done online. However, he may not know any other area of Torah law. So in other words, you can specialize in just one field. Such a person must be very cautious about holding himself out as a rabbi, because he is not qualified to discuss anything other than the laws of Shabbat. There are many area-specific rabbis. There are many area-specific rabbis in the world today, and unfortunately, many hold themselves out as Torah authorities, when in actuality they are woefully unqualified outside their narrow area of study. Of rabbis who teach or rule on matters in which they are not thoroughly versed, Maimonides described them as evil, arrogant people. Those Maimonides' words, not mine. Because it is possible to get smicha in only one narrow area of study or expertise, it means that one does not have to be a Torah scholar to be a rabbi, and likewise one does not need to be a rabbi to be a Torah scholar. So one does not even have to study at a yeshiva to attain smicha. Either a person can study at a yeshiva or receive it through studying privately, and it be examined by a renowned Torah scholar. So ultimately the world of Torah scholarship is vastly different to what it was in ancient times. Great scholars receive great recognition and are accorded authority on the merits of their achievements. For this reason, many of the greatest Torah scholars and authorities in the past 150 years never bothered with smicha. So I think these things that I'm referring to here may or may not be known to a lot of Noahides. So this is why it will help us understand why some rabbis can't be a voice of authority on every specific thing. So Rabbi Blumenstill has a subheading saying choosing a rabbi. The only qualified rabbis are those who are observant and receive their training from orthodox institutions. Just underline that. They've received their training from an orthodox institution. If a rabbi was, ordained in a reform, that is not an orthodox institution. To be very, very careful there. it is also pertinent for us to know from where a rabbi received his smicha. Did he get it online from a recognized Torah scholar or from a yeshiva? All three could be valid, but it depends on the source. Now, this is something else that is very interesting over here and probably will ring in the ears of some Noahides here. But firstly, I want to read this. What did the rabbi have to study to receive his smicha? Was it in one area, or did he have to complete a long course of study? I'm not talking about 12 months, 2 years, 3 years. I'm talking about 5, 6+ years. Most importantly, is the rabbi affiliated with a particular institution? Now, I use an example. It might be Breslev, it could be Chabad. There's varying other institutions, etc., that have a governing body, guidelines and boundaries and rules regarding the rabbis that work under their umbrella. Or is this rabbi pure and simply a lone wolf? Now, lone wolf tend to do their own thing, and we are advised that we should generally avoid these type of teachers because they actually have no accountability to anyone besides themselves. So they don't have a governing body of senior, more scholarly rabbis, wiser rabbis that can oversee what they're doing and can guide them and perhaps correct them if they've made an error, or teach them even for that matter. So we need to be extremely careful of that. And so the main point of this is that we must endeavour to find a rabbi in whose scholarship we have confidence and who we believe will take our interests seriously. If you always agree with everything your rabbi tells you, then your relationship with the rabbi is not healthy for you, apparently. So, in other words, what Rabbi Blumenstiel is saying here is that we really need a rabbi that actually questions us and challenges us. That makes us study and learn and teaches us to be critical, to critique is a better word, what we're learning and studying and why, what's behind it, why do we do this? And most of all, it goes on to say that we must find a rabbi who is consistent in his teachings. A rabbi that chops and changes his opinion or says one thing one day and something else another day, again, needs to be avoided. And this, Rabbi Blumenstiel goes on to say, this also includes any Noahide who's out there teaching other Noahides, etc. The same thing applies. That, are they a lone wolf or do they belong to a group of Noahides, etc. So you need to just be, careful, to be cautious. There's nothing wrong with you thinking, I'm not sure how I feel about this teacher. I need to sit back and maybe get some advice. So what happens today is that there are different degrees of specialising, rabbis who specialise in things. Someone can go to med school and become a doctor, but then they might branch out and decide they're going to be a paediatrician or an orthopaedic surgeon or an anaesthetist, and, it goes on and on. So they're all doctors, but then they specialise in something. The same as rabbis are rabbis, but then some of them specialise in a certain particular field of study or law. And so you will have different rabbis that are particularly brilliant in some area. It's specialising. We should always give honour to Torah scholars, and there is a verse in Leviticus. It's chapter 19, verse 32, And when you've finished watching this video, please go and take a look at it, because I want to just say now, before I go any further, if I was sitting in a room where Rabbi Blumenstiel walked in, I would stand in his presence. I have that much confidence in him and in what he says. So that has just been an outline. Credit to Rabbi Blumenstiel for that information and recommendations that he has given. He went on further to recommend rabbis, and included in those were 2 rabbis that I trust implicitly with their information and advice and knowledge, and that would be Rabbi Dr. Michael Schulman from asknoah.org, and certainly Rabbi Moshe Weiner, who wrote the Divine Code, and I hold both those men in extreme esteem for their knowledge and for their guidance and their teachings, and they have never failed me. Now, if you go to my website, you will find a list of other rabbis I recommend. You will also find a link to the actual yeshiva course that I mentioned that that Rabbi Blumenstiel conducts, and I would recommend, if you're serious about the Noahide laws and really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of why we do. That's my little dog rolling and playing at the moment. I would strongly recommend you take a look at that course. It is on Noahide Nation's website. You'll find the link on my website if you can't locate it somewhere else. And Rabbi Blumenstiel's course is exceptional. It is the best I have seen so far. And so that would be my recommendation. So please just remember not to expect too much from your rabbis, because they're not all specialists. If they say to you, look, I don't know much about the Noahide laws, but I'm willing to learn, or something like, you've got to be reasonable, because rabbis are busy and they're scarce on the ground for Noahides. But that doesn't mean that we make a mistake and learn from someone who's inappropriate or not able to impart the information that we need. So please be aware of that. And again, thank you, Rabbi Blumenstiel, for the information that I've imparted, and all credit to you. And I would like to say to you all, please take care, choose the right rabbi, and may God bless you always. Bye.